Hey guys! Tonight, let's kick things off with a story. The memories of Amsterdam are guarded by its spiritual essence. Back in 1672, the wealthy merchant van der Linden merged into the city itself. Now, Samuel and Lena have uncovered the truth and become the new guardians. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly love what I'm doing here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you right now. It's always fascinating to see people from all over the world join us. Amsterdam in 1672 was like a sponge soaked in both gold and blood. The Dutch called this year the disaster year. French troops had trampled the southern border. The Anglo-Dutch fleets clashed fiercely in the North Sea, and within the city itself, an attempted coup against the city council had just been crushed in the pre-dawn mist. The blood of the rebels had been washed away by the canal waters, but fear, like damp mildew, seeped into the cracks of every brick and stone. In mid-September, Samuel de Kock stood before a 3-story stone mansion by the Herengracht. His boots splattered with mud. The tulip pattern carved into the brass knocker had been worn smooth by time, and the van der Linden family crest above the lintel was covered with a thin layer of dust. It was the 3rd month since the wealthy merchant Willem van der Linden had vanished. As an investigator hired by the city council, Samuel had taken on not just a missing person case, but a mystery that had gripped the entire city. "Mr. Samuel, please come in." Jan Peters, the old butler, pushed open the heavy wooden door. The cuffs of his uniform were frayed, and the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes were deeper than the moss growing on the mansion's cornerstones. As they walked down the corridor lined with Persian carpets, Samuel smelled 2 intermingling scents: the rich aroma of fine tobacco and the distinctive stale smell of ancient books, a blend of paper and ink. The study was the heart of the entire mansion. 2 walls were lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, on which leather-bound books were neatly arranged, the gilded lettering on many spines having faded. A massive oak desk stood beneath the diamond-paned window, and sunlight filtering through the glass cast dappled light on the desktop, much like the ripples on the canal surface. There were no messy documents on the desk, only an open red sandalwood box, inside which lay 3 neatly stacked pages of manuscript. "The police found this in a hidden compartment of the safe," Peters said, standing by the desk with a low voice. For 3 days before the master disappeared, he stayed in the study almost every day fiddling with these papers. "I thought they were some important contracts, but never imagined." He spread his hands, his face filled with confusion. Samuel stepped forward and gently pinched the edge of the manuscript. The paper was thick with fine fibers, clearly the finest linen paper in 17th century Amsterdam, and the binding thread was expensive silk, yet the pages were pure white, without a single trace of ink. He held the manuscript close to the window and examined it carefully in the sunlight. There were no translucent marks on the back, nor any traces of being cut with a knife or drawn on with a crayon. "How is the inventory of Mr. van der Linden's assets going?" Samuel asked without lifting his head, his gaze still fixed on the blank manuscript. "It's a mess," Peters sighed. The funds in his bank account were transferred in batches a week before he disappeared, and their whereabouts are unknown. The spices and silks in the warehouse are still there, but his most treasured ancient books, the rare copies rumored to have been bought from the Spanish royal family, are all gone. Some say he absconded with the money, but I've served him for 30 years, and he's not that kind of man. Samuel put down the manuscript and walked to the bookshelf. He casually pulled out a 16th century copy of Geographia, opened the title page, and saw van der Linden's signature, bold and powerful. On the top shelf of the bookshelf stood several old maps of Amsterdam, one of which marked the city's layout in 1600, with canals winding around the old town like silver ribbons, and many alleyways that have long since disappeared clearly visible. "Did you see him the night of the coup?" Samuel suddenly asked. Peter's body stiffened noticeably. The fog was extremely thick that night, so thick that you couldn't see the house across the street. The master stayed in the study until 3 in the morning, then told me to prepare the carriage, saying he was going to the old town hall. I tried to persuade him that it was unsafe at midnight, but he only said, "Some things are more important than life." That was the last time I saw him. The old town hall. Samuel repeated the name to himself. That was the core location of the attempted coup. The rebels had tried to seize control of the council, but were suppressed by the guards who had been tipped off in advance. For van der Linden to go there at such a sensitive time was by no means accidental. He walked back to the desk and picked up the manuscript. Just then, a morning breeze blew in, lifting the velvet curtains by the window. As the sun rose higher, a beam of sunlight with the soft hue of tulip petals spread across the desktop, exactly covering the paper in Samuel's hands. A miracle happened. Faint lines gradually emerged on the originally blank paper. Not words written in ink, but a series of smooth outlines. First a graceful arc, much like the top of the gable unique to old houses. Then crisscrossing thin lines, sketching the interweaving of narrow alleyways, and some irregular polygons, clearly the marks of forgotten courtyards or squares. Samuel held his breath and slowly rotated the manuscript in his hand. The lines actually flowed as the angle of the light changed, sometimes clear, sometimes blurry, as if the sleeping city was breathing gently in his palm. He instinctively ran his fingers across the paper. He did not feel the stickiness of ink, but instead touched imperceptible protrusions, as if the fibers of the paper itself had undergone some wonderful mutation. "My God!" Peters leaned forward, his old eyes wide open. "I clean the study every day, and I've never seen this before." Samuel said nothing. He moved the manuscript into the shade, and the lines immediately receded like a tide, the paper returning to pure white. He put it back in the sunlight again. The lines did not appear immediately, but as long as he adjusted it to a specific angle, the blurry outlines would emerge once more. "This is not an ordinary manuscript," Samuel said in a hoarse voice. "It needs specific light to reveal itself. What van der Linden left behind is not words, but a map, or rather, the memory imprints of Amsterdam." Peter suddenly seemed to remember something, hurried to the drawer beside the desk, rummaged through it for a while, and then took out a brass key. The key was a little larger than an ordinary door key, its surface worn almost smooth, the patterns on the edges blurred, but a little dark brown silt was still embedded deep in the key teeth, as if it came from the bottom of the canal. "The master put this with me before he disappeared, saying wait for the right person to claim it." Peters handed the key to Samuel. "I never understood what he meant, but now it seems you are that right person." Samuel took the key, and the cold touch of metal came from his fingertips. He noticed a tiny symbol carved on the key handle. It was the badge pattern that once adorned the gate of the old town hall, which had long since disappeared with the renovation of the building. Did he say anything else about this key? He said that even if the door opened by the key is gone, what is behind the door remains. Samuel did not go to the ruins of the old town hall immediately. He took the manuscript and the key to the Amsterdam archives. This stone building next to the church housed the city's archives dating back to the 13th century, with yellowed parchment and thick account books recording every breath of the city. Jacob, the archivist, was an old acquaintance of Samuel's. He wore a monocle, and his fingers were covered with calluses from flipping through papers all year round. "You're looking for materials on the 1672 coup? Many people have been asking about this recently," Jacob said as he took down several volumes of archives from the shelf. "But most of the records about van der Linden are scattered. He was a low-key man, and rarely appeared in public records except for business matters." Samuel opened a leather-bound volume of archives, which contained witness testimonies from the day of the coup. One was from a guard at the Old Town Hall, recording that around 4 in the morning, "I saw Mr. van der Linden enter the town hall alone, holding a heavy wooden box." Another was a confession from a rebel, which mentioned, We will burn the books that represent the old order and make Amsterdam submit completely. Books that represent the old order? Samuel frowned. Van der Linden's ancient books? Very likely. Jacob handed over a cup of hot cocoa. Wealthy merchants in the 17th century all loved collecting ancient books, especially Jewish scriptures and scientific works that flowed out of Spain and Portugal. These books are not only valuable, but also carry ideas. To the rebels, ideas are more terrifying than swords and knives. Samuel suddenly thought of the lines on the manuscript. He took out the manuscript and placed it under the south window of the archives, where the angle of sunlight was similar to that in van der Linden's study. The tulip-colored light covered the paper again, and the architectural outlines became clear. He compared it with the old maps in the archives and was surprised to find that the imprints on the manuscript exactly matched the old city of Amsterdam in 1600, even marking several culverts that had long been filled and abandoned wells. These lines are not random. Samuel pointed to a circular imprint on the manuscript. This is the courtyard of the old town hall, and this cross-shaped line should be the fountain in the courtyard. He looked up at Jacob. What does the old town hall look like now? It's long gone from its original appearance, Jacob sighed. The year after the coup, the city council decided to renovate the town hall, demolishing the original Gothic building and building a new Baroque-style building in its place. The original site is now a warehouse area near the docks, piled with spices and porcelain shipped from the Dutch East India Company. That evening, Samuel took the manuscript and the key to the dock area. The setting sun dyed the sky golden red, and huge windmills turned in the distance, their shadows cast on the stone walls of the warehouses like the fingers of giants. This place was once the heart of Amsterdam, but now it was filled with the shouts of porters and the knocking of shipyards, and the ancient atmosphere was overshadowed by the hustle and bustle of commerce. He walked through the warehouse area according to the imprints on the manuscript. The roads here had long been replanned, but Samuel could still discern the outline of the old town hall from the foundations of some buildings and the stone blocks at the corners of the walls. When he walked to an open space piled with oak barrels, the brass key in his hand suddenly began to feel slightly warm. Samuel stopped and looked around. Several carved stone blocks were scattered on the open space, clearly the remains of an old building. He squatted down and brushed the dust off the stone blocks, seeing the same badge pattern as on the key handle. This was exactly where the foundation of the old town hall lay. Night gradually fell, and fewer people were in the dock area. Samuel found a sheltered corner to sit down and held the key in his palm. The temperature of the key grew higher and higher, beating as if it had a life of its own. He closed his eyes and tried to concentrate, and suddenly, a faint sound came to his ears. Not the hustle and bustle of the dock, but an older, more distant noise. It was the sound of horses' hooves. The crisp sound of hooves tapping on the stone slabs made a clatter sound. Then came the sound of people talking, in the 17th century Amsterdam dialect, fast-paced, with the unique shrewdness of merchants. Then there were church bells, coming from a distant church, steady and powerful. These sounds did not come from the outside, but echoed directly in his consciousness, as clear as if he was there in person. Samuel suddenly opened his eyes, and the sound disappeared in an instant. The key in his palm was still warm, but the feeling of connection with the past had been broken. He lowered his head to look at the manuscript in his hand. By this time it was dark, and the lines on the paper had faded again, leaving only a pure white background. The key is a prism of time, Samuel remembered Peter's words. Everywhere is a mark of 100 years of memory. He finally understood that this key was not used to open a physical door, but a medium to connect with the city's memories. What van der Linden left behind was not a clue to treasure, but a code to awaken the city's spirit. In the following days, Samuel went to the ruins of the old town hall every day. He tried holding the key at different times and in different weather conditions, trying to reconnect with those lost memories. Sometimes he could hear faint sounds of the city. Sometimes he could see flashing images. Merchants in long gowns, maids carrying lanterns, children chasing each other in the square. But these fragments were very short, like candle flames in the wind, fleeting. One early morning, Samuel came to the ruins again. Thick fog shrouded the dock area, with visibility of less than 10 meters. He held the key and slowly closed his eyes. Suddenly, a familiar sound of footsteps came, steady and powerful. He opened his eyes and saw a blurry figure standing in the fog not far away, wearing a 17th century black coat and a wide-brimmed hat. His figure was very similar to van der Linden in the portrait. "What are you looking for?" the figure asked, his voice as if coming from a far distance. "I'm looking for you and the ancient books and wealth you took away," Samuel replied, his heart beating fast. The figure chuckled, and the fog swirled around him. "Wealth has never disappeared, nor have the ancient books. The manuscript in your hand is the most precious book. The key you hold is the richest treasure." He took a step forward, and his figure became a little clearer. "You think I am a merchant, but my real identity is the Guardian of Amsterdam." "Guardian?" Samuel frowned. "This city has a soul," the figure said. "It is formed by every brick and stone, every canal, and the memories of everyone who has lived here. The 1672 coup was not only a political upheaval, but also an impact on the city's soul. The rebels wanted to burn the ancient books, essentially to erase the city's memories and make it a puppet without roots." Samuel suddenly thought of the lines on the manuscript. "So you transformed the ancient books into the city's memories?" "The ancient books themselves are carriers of memories," the figure nodded. "I just let them return to their origin. Those words and knowledge are no longer locked in the study, but integrated into the texture of the city. The curvature of the gable holds philosophical thinking. The interweaving of alleyways contains the context of history, and the ripples of the canal flow with the wisdom of science." Just then, the fog began to disperse, and the morning sun broke through the clouds, spreading over the open space. The figure gradually became transparent, dissipating in the sunlight like morning mist. Only one sentence lingered in Samuel's ears. "To see the complete truth, seek the old courtyard bathed in tulip-colored sunlight." The old courtyard bathed in tulip-colored sunlight. Samuel pondered this sentence repeatedly. He took out the manuscript again and examined it in the sunlight, finally finding a tiny mark in the corner of one page. A blooming tulip pattern, with a string of numbers marked next to it. 1730, southwest corner. 1730 should refer to 5:30 in the afternoon, and the southwest corner is probably the southwestern area of the Old Town. It is one of the oldest neighborhoods in Amsterdam, retaining a large number of 17th century buildings, and many courtyards have been forgotten in the depths of the alleyways due to urban expansion. Samuel spent 2 days wandering through the alleyways in the southwest corner of the Old Town. The roads here are narrow and winding, with tall stone buildings on both sides towering into the clouds, cutting the sky into slender shapes. He took the manuscript and the old map, comparing each courtyard hidden between the buildings one by one. Most of the courtyards were deserted and overgrown with weeds. Only a few were still inhabited, with bright potted plants placed at the door. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon on the third day, Samuel came to an alley called Swan Lane. The alley was so narrow that only one person could pass through, and the walls were covered with ivy. At the end of the alley, he saw a dilapidated wooden door with a rusty iron lock hanging on it. On the stone wall next to the wooden door, a tulip pattern exactly like the one on the manuscript was carved. Samuel pushed the door, but it didn't move at all. He took out the brass key and tried to insert it into the iron lock. The key fit the lock perfectly. With a soft click, the rusty iron lock was opened. He pushed open the wooden door, and a quiet courtyard appeared in front of him. The courtyard was not big, with an old well in the middle, the well platform covered with moss. It was surrounded by stone walls, which were covered with red roses. At the end of the courtyard stood a small stone house with a typical Dutch gable roof. The glass on the windows had been replaced with modern ones, but the window frames were still in the 17th century carved style. "Is anyone there?" Samuel called out, and only his echo could be heard in the courtyard. He walked to the stone house and gently pushed open the half-closed door. The furnishings inside the house were simple and primitive, with an oak table, 2 chairs, and an old wardrobe in the corner. On the table stood an oil lamp and several open books. The pages yellowed, clearly having been there for many years. Samuel walked to the table and picked up one of the books. The cover of the book was worn, with a history of Amsterdam written on it, and the author's signature read, Jan van der Linden. Van der Linden? Samuel's heart moved. This surname was the same as Willem van der Linden's. Could he be his clansman? Just then, the setting sun's rays streamed through the window into the house. The sunlight at 5:30 in the afternoon exactly took on a rich tulip color, spreading across the entire desktop. Samuel instinctively took out the manuscript and placed it in the sunlight. This time, what appeared on the paper was no longer architectural outlines, but lines of flowing text. It was Willem van der Linden's diary. July 15th, 1672. Foggy. The rebels' secret letter was intercepted. They want to burn my study. Those ancient books cannot be destroyed, for they are the roots of Amsterdam. I must find a way to protect them. July 20th, 1672. Sunny. I found the family secret. It turns out that the van der Linden family has been the guardian of the city for generations. Ancient books can be transformed into the city's memories, and gold can be turned into energy to stabilize the city's spirit. This process needs to rely on the power of the earth veins of the old town hall. August 3rd, 1672. Overcast. The coup is imminent, and time is running out. I have transferred the funds, part for repairing damaged historical buildings, and part for the citizens in need. Peters is a trustworthy man. He will hand the key to the right person. August 10th, 1672, morning. The transformation is complete. The knowledge in the ancient books has integrated into every corner of the city, and the energy of gold has stabilized the earth veins. I can feel my body dissipating, becoming part of the city's spirit. Do not grieve for me, for I am only returning to where I should be. The text gradually disappeared as the sun moved, and what was left in the end was a complete distribution map of the city's spirit. The old town hall was the core. The courtyard on Swan Lane was an important node, and several locations marked with churches, canals, and windmills together constituted Amsterdam's spirit network. So that's it, Samuel muttered to himself. He finally understood that van der Linden's disappearance was not an escape, but a sacrifice. He had merged his life with the city's spirit, becoming an eternal guardian. The so-called missing property had long since been transformed into a force to protect the city, nourishing every inch of Amsterdam's land. Just then, the door of the stone house was pushed open. A girl wearing a blue dress walked in. She looked only a teenager with 2 braids, and her eyes were as clear as the canal water. "Who are you? Why are you here?" the girl asked in a wary voice. "I'm Samuel, an investigator." Samuel stood up. "And you? Is this your home?" "My name is Lena van der Linden," the girl replied. "This is my ancestral home. I have lived here since I was a child. My grandfather told me that the van der Linden family must guard this courtyard for generations, waiting for a man with a brass key." Her gaze fell on the key in Samuel's hand, and her eyes suddenly lit up. "You are that man." Samuel nodded and handed the manuscript and the key to Lena. "Your ancestor Willem van der Linden was a great guardian. He left these things hoping that someone would inherit his mission and continue to guard Amsterdam's spirit." Lena took the manuscript and the key, and her fingers gently brushed the paper. When her fingertips touched those hidden lines, Clear words and patterns immediately appeared on the paper. Grandfather said that only the blood of the van der Linden family can truly activate these memories. Lena looked up at Samuel. "Will you guard the city with me?" Samuel looked at the setting sun outside the window. The tulip-colored sunlight spread over the roses in the courtyard, so beautiful that it took his breath away. He thought of his father, a scholar who studied Amsterdam's history, whose greatest wish in life was to make more people understand the city's soul. Now he had the opportunity to fulfill his father's last wish and inherit van der Linden's mission. "I will," Samuel said firmly. Samuel and Lena began to cooperate. Having been taught by her grandfather since childhood, Lena had a keen perception of Amsterdam's history and spirit. She could find the hidden spirit nodes in the city's corners through the imprints on the manuscript, while Samuel, with the rigor and carefulness of an investigator, sorted out and studied the information extracted from the memories. They went to the bell tower of the old church together, where Lena felt the piety and perseverance of the 15th century craftsmen who built the bell tower through the quay. They went to the old warehouse of the Dutch East India Company together, and in the piles of spices, smelled the sea breeze brought back by the ocean-going merchant ships 100 years ago. They also went to the windmill village together, and in the sound of the windmills turning, heard the joyful laughter of farmers, celebrating a bumper harvest. As their understanding of the city's spirit deepened, Samuel found that Amsterdam's spirit was gradually weakening. Many historical buildings in the old town had been demolished and replaced by tall shops and residences. The water quality in the canals was getting worse and worse, and the once clear water waves had become turbid. Even those ancient customs and dialects were gradually being forgotten. The power of the spirit comes from the city's memories and history. Lena stood in front of a demolished old building, her expression solemn. When these memories are erased, the spirit will naturally weaken. If this continues, Amsterdam will lose its soul and become a city without warmth. Samuel looked at the ruins in front of him, his heart filled with anxiety. He had recently received many complaints from citizens, saying that some strange phenomena had appeared in the old town. Inexplicable crying could be heard at night, some ancient furniture would move by itself, and even someone had seen blurry, ghostly figures in the fog. These phenomena were all signs of the weakening of the spirit. "We have to do something," Samuel said. "Van der Linden transformed ancient books and gold into the city's spirit, and we can also find a way to strengthen it." They returned to the courtyard on Swan Lane and browsed through the manuscripts left by Lena's grandfather. In one yellow diary, it mentioned the heart of the spirit, the core of Amsterdam's spirit, located deep in the earth veins under the ruins of the old town hall. As long as the heart of the spirit is activated, the city spirit can be stabilized again. But activating the heart of the spirit requires 3 tokens: a fragment of an ancient book representing knowledge, a piece of gold representing wealth, and a family crest representing guardianship. The fragment of the ancient book and the piece of gold should have integrated into the city's spirit, Lena said. And the family crest is in our ancestral shrine. The ancestral shrine was located in the northwest corner of the courtyard, a small stone house where the memorial tablets of the van der Linden family's ancestors were placed. At the top of the memorial tablets hung a golden crest carved with tulip and canal patterns. It was exactly the van der Linden family crest. Lena took down the crest. It felt warm to the touch, as if it contained some kind of energy. Now we need to find the imprints of the ancient book fragment and the gold piece. She placed the crest on the manuscript, and the crest emitted a faint golden light, and 2 flashing spots immediately appeared on the manuscript. One was located in the library of the University of Amsterdam, and the other was at an old pawn shop by the canal. Early the next morning, they first went to the library of the University of Amsterdam. This time-honored library housed a large number of ancient books and manuscripts. According to the guidance on the manuscript, they found a 16th century copy of Natural Philosophy in the underground stack room of the library. When Lena brought the family crest close to the book, lines of ancient text immediately appeared on the pages. It was the imprint of the ancient book fragment. These texts are records about the city's spirit. Samuel studied the words carefully. It says that the strengthening of the spirit relies on people's love and memories of the city. Everyone who understands and cherishes the city's history can inject power into the spirit. Then they came to the old pawn shop by the canal. This pawn shop had been in business for more than 300 years, witnessing the rise and fall of Amsterdam. In the backyard of the pawn shop, there was an ancient well. When Lena brought the crest close to the well water rippled with a faint golden light, and a small gold piece floated up from the water. It was the imprint of the gold fragment. Gold represents the city's wealth. Lena picked up the gold piece. But the wealth here does not refer to money, but to the city's commercial vitality and the hard work and wisdom of the citizens. It is these that made Amsterdam the warehouse of the world. After obtaining the imprints of the 3 tokens, Samuel and Lena immediately went to the ruins of the old town hall. It was already midnight, and the dock area was empty, with only moonlight spreading on the stone slabs, shimmering with silver light. According to the guidance on the manuscript, they found a special stone slab at the center of the ruins. The same spirit distribution map as on the manuscript was carved on the stone slab. Lena placed the family crest in the center of the stone slab, and Samuel placed the imprints of the ancient book fragment and the gold fragment on both sides of the crest respectively. When the imprints of the 3 tokens met, the stone slab emitted a dazzling golden light, and the ground began to vibrate slightly. The stone slab slowly split open, revealing a bottomless hole from which a faint energy wave came, the breath of the heart of the spirit. "We need to go down to activate it," Lena said, her eyes shining with firmness. Samuel nodded, took out a rope from his backpack, and tied it to a stone pillar beside him. "I'll go down first, and you keep watch above." He slowly lowered himself down the rope. Below the hole was a narrow passage, with luminous oars inlaid on the walls of the passage, illuminating the way forward. After walking about dozens of meters, the passage suddenly opened up, and a huge underground cave appeared in front of him. In the center of the cave was a crystal emitting soft light. That was the heart of the spirit. The light of the heart of the spirit was somewhat dim, and its surface was covered with fine cracks. Samuel knew that this was a sign of the weakening of the spirit. He quickly walked to the crystal and placed the imprints of the 3 tokens on the crystal. The imprints merged with the crystal, emitting a strong light, and the cracks on the crystal's surface gradually disappeared, and the light became more and more dazzling. When Samuel returned to the ground, the sky had already turned pale. He saw Lena standing beside the stone slab, a surprised smile on her face. "Look!" Lena pointed to the old town in the distance. "The spirit has strengthened." Samuel followed Lena's finger and saw a faint golden light covering the sky above the old town, which was the light of the city's spirit. The water in the canals became clear again, and the ancient buildings regained their vitality. He knew they had succeeded. After the heart of the spirit was activated, great changes took place in Amsterdam. The historical buildings in the old town were better protected, and the municipal government issued a series of policies to encourage citizens to understand and inherit the city's historical and cultural heritage. The water quality of the canals was improved, and more water birds returned here, playing and frolicking on the water surface. At night, strange phenomena no longer appeared in the old town. Instead, it was replaced by citizens walking leisurely and laughing happily. Samuel submitted the final investigation report to the city council. In the report, he described in detail the truth of van der Linden's disappearance and the existence of the city's spirit. At first, the members of the city council were skeptical about this, but when they saw the magical changes on the manuscript with their own eyes and the positive changes in the old town, they finally believed Samuel's words. The city council not only stopped the investigation into van der Linden, but also set up a special historical protection agency, with Samuel as the person in charge. Samuel and Lena became the secret guardians of Amsterdam. They often walked through the alleyways of the old town together, telling the city's historical stories to citizens and tourists. They held lectures in schools to let children understand the guardianship mission of the van der Linden family. They also sorted out a large number of historical materials and published a book called The Spirit of Amsterdam, letting more people know the soul of the city. A year later, on August 10th, the first anniversary of van der Linden's disappearance, Samuel and Lena took the manuscript and the key to the ruins of the old town hall. The sun was setting, and the tulip-colored sunlight spread over the entire ruins. Samuel held the key in his palm, and Lena held the manuscript. Both of them closed their eyes at the same time. This time, they clearly saw van der Linden. He stood in the courtyard of the old town hall, holding a stack of ancient books in his hands, with a calm smile on his face. When he saw Samuel and Lena, he nodded slightly, then threw the ancient books into the air. The ancient books turned into countless spots of light, integrating into the surrounding buildings and land. Van der Linden's body also gradually dissipated, merging with the city's spirit. "Thank you," van der Linden's voice echoed in their ears. "Amsterdam's spirit needs to be guarded by generations of people. Now, this mission has been passed on to you." When they opened their eyes, the sun had set and stars appeared in the sky. Samuel looked at Lena beside him, who had a firm smile on her face. He knew that their road of guardianship had only just begun. A few years later, Samuel and Lena got married, and their child was born in the courtyard on Swan Lane. This small courtyard became an important node of Amsterdam's spirit, and more people came here to listen to the city's stories and feel the temperature of history. Now, when tourists ask about Amsterdam's most precious treasure, the locals will smile mysteriously and say, "Go for a walk in the old town in the early morning, with an open heart. The real treasure is not in a box, but among the bricks and stones, above the canals, and deep in the memories. If you are quiet enough, you may hear the city telling you its secrets." And Samuel and Lena know that those secrets are breathing in the morning light, sleeping in every old key, and waiting to reveal themselves on every page of the blank manuscript. They will be passed down by generations of guardians forever. For Amsterdam's soul will never disappear. It lives in the heart of everyone who loves the city, and in the eternal river of time. On a morning when tulips were in full bloom, Samuel's son held the brass key and stood on the ruins of the old town hall. When the first ray of sunlight spread on the manuscript in his hand, clear lines and words immediately appeared on the paper. A surprised smile appeared on the little boy's face. He knew that he would also become the guardian of Amsterdam, continuing to write the legend of the city.